when Captain Ibrahim Traoré declared, "Perhaps everything we've done has surprised you, hasn't it? More changes might still surprise you." He was not merely making a statement, he was issuing a warning to those who doubted his leadership and vision for Burkina Faso. His words were a declaration of unstoppable change, a commitment to reshape his nation's future through action, not rhetoric. Now just 5 weeks into 2025, Traoré has already achieved what many African leaders failed to accomplish in an entire year. His rapid and decisive actions have unsettled corrupt African elites who have long thrived on inaction and dependency. Even Western powers, especially those who recently cut aid to Burkina Faso, are now watching in disbelief as the country moves toward full self-sufficiency, proving that it can thrive without relying on foreign assistance. If you've been following social media, you may have seen a viral video circulating online. This is no ordinary video. It is the footage of an enormous convoy transporting brand new road construction and farming equipment worth millions of dollars into Burkina Faso. What makes this moment even more remarkable is that this revelation did not come from government officials or state media. Instead, a Ghanaian traveler filmed the convoy as it entered Burkina Faso from Ghana, capturing what many African leaders only dream of but never achieve: development in action. While some leaders in Africa organize lavish ceremonies and press conferences to announce so-called development projects that never materialize, Traoré has taken a different approach. Let the work speak for itself. No unnecessary grandstanding, no empty words, just results. This is the true definition of leadership. The most shocking part of this development is how Burkina Faso is funding these projects. Unlike other African nations where leaders beg for foreign aid while mismanaging domestic resources, Burkina Faso is financing its infrastructure projects without foreign loans or external assistance. This stands in stark contrast to the situation in other African nations, where leaders have spent the first weeks of 2025 hopping from one international summit to another, seeking more aid, signing more loan agreements, and making empty promises to their people. Now, with the newly elected US President Donald Trump cutting aid to Africa, these leaders are in a state of confusion because the funds they have relied on for decades, funds that often disappear into their private bank accounts, are no longer guaranteed. But Burkina Faso is different. Traoré has ensured that his government remains financially independent, capable of funding its projects without waiting for handouts from former colonial powers. These massive shipments of machinery are not for display, they serve a strategic purpose. The Burkinabe government has committed to constructing major highways and transportation networks that will connect the nation's biggest cities. This is part of a wider economic strategy to ensure that goods, people, and services can move efficiently across the country. But the vision doesn't stop at Burkina Faso's borders. The country is actively working with its allies in the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, Mali, and Niger, on a transformative regional infrastructure project. One of the most ambitious plans in the pipeline is the construction of an interstate highway, which will connect Niamey, Terra, Dori, Kaya, Ouagadougou, Bobo Dioulasso, Oradora, Sikasso, Buguni, Bamako. This highway will serve as a vital economic artery linking the three countries, allowing for smoother trade, better connectivity, and greater economic cooperation. One of the most remarkable aspects of Burkina Faso's new economic model is that all these projects are being funded internally. The country has completely rejected the debt trap that has ensnared many African nations for decades. Just last year, in 2024, Burkinabe citizens contributed over 175 billion CFA francs to the war effort, a clear sign of national unity and self-reliance. This amount was raised independently without relying on foreign loans, and with the recent establishment of a gold refinery, Burkina Faso is now in an even stronger financial position. The country no longer has to export raw gold, only to buy it back at inflated prices. Instead, it can process and sell gold directly, keeping profits within the country and using them to finance major national projects. Now, with a stable financial foundation, Burkina Faso can purchase any equipment, fund any infrastructure project, and invest in its own future without outside interference. What Burkina Faso is doing under Ibrahim Traoré is not just an internal transformation, it is a wake-up call for all of Africa. For decades, many African nations have upended on foreign aid, falling into endless cycles of debt and dependency, while their leaders pocketed the funds meant for development. But Burkina Faso is breaking that cycle. No more begging for aid, no more waiting for loans, no more broken promises. Instead, Traoré has shown that, with the right leadership, a nation can achieve true independence, both politically and economically. This is why corrupt African leaders are panicking. They have spent years convincing their people that progress is impossible without foreign assistance. Now, Traoré is proving them wrong, and this is why Western nations are uneasy. Their influence over Burkina Faso is diminishing. Their ability to control African economies through debt is weakening. A self-reliant Burkina Faso is a direct challenge to their geopolitical strategies in Africa. Ibrahim Traoré is not just making history, he is rewriting Africa's future. By taking control of its resources, economy and infrastructure, Burkina Faso is setting an example for the rest of Africa. The Alliance of Sahel States, AES, Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, is showing the continent that true sovereignty is possible. With a strong military independent economy and ambitious development projects, Burkina Faso is proving that an all-African nation can rise without the West. Speaking of foreign aid, not everyone will remember this, but when Captain Ibrahim Traoré said that we have been receiving aid for 63 years, yet our country has not developed, cutting it off from us now will not kill us. Rather, it will motivate us to work and reform ourselves, carry a profound truth that many failed to grasp until recently. His statement became even more relevant when the newly elected US President Donald Trump made the bold decision to end US foreign aid to African nations. The reaction from African leaders and citizens was immediate and intense. Many took to social media, voicing outrage and frustration, accusing the US of abandoning them and labeling the move as unjust and damaging. However, what is missing from these complaints is a fundamental question. Why should Africa be in a position where the withdrawal of foreign aid causes such panic? For decades, foreign aid has been presented as a solution to Africa's problems. However, rather than fostering economic independence and sustainable development, it has created a dangerous culture of dependency. Instead of being used effectively to uplift the people, much of this aid has been wasted, mismanaged, or outright stolen. African governments have long blamed their struggles on external factors, colonialism, economic exploitation by the West, and climate change. While these factors have certainly played a role in shaping Africa's history, they do not explain the ongoing failure of many African governments to build strong, independent economies. When financial assistance is given, instead of being used to develop critical infrastructure, healthcare, or education systems, it is often misappropriated. And when citizens or international organizations demand transparency, African leaders react with hostility instead of accountability. The results of this mismanagement are glaring. In South Africa, state-owned enterprises like Eskom and Transnet have been hollowed out by corruption, leading to power shortages and economic stagnation. Public funds meant for social services mysteriously vanish into the pockets of politicians and their allies. In Nigeria, billions in oil revenue, foreign aid and loans disappear every year due to mismanagement and embezzlement. Infrastructure projects stall, healthcare remains inadequate, and unemployment skyrockets, while government officials live in obscene luxury. In Kenya, the national debt has ballooned due to reckless borrowing, yet government officials continue to enrich themselves while citizens bear the burden of higher taxes and inflation. This is not a failure of foreign donors, this is a failure of African leadership. One of the biggest misconceptions about foreign aid is that it is free money given without conditions. However, aid is not a gift, it comes with expectations. The nations providing this assistance expect that the money will be used responsibly to uplift populations, improve governance, and foster economic stability. Yet, too often, African leaders treat foreign aid as an entitlement rather than an investment in their people. They accept billions in funding, but reject any form of oversight. They insist on sovereignty when it comes to how they spend money, but refuse to be held accountable when corruption is exposed. This creates a vicious cycle. 1. Corrupt governments receive aid with little oversight. 2. The money is mismanaged, stolen, or used inefficiently. 3. Public projects remain unfinished or of poor quality. 4. Citizens see no real improvement in their lives. 5. Governments demand more aid, blaming external factors for their failures. 6. Foreign donors continue providing aid, hoping for different results. This system does not help Africa grow, it keeps it dependent. When Donald Trump announced the end of US foreign aid to African nations, many reacted with outrage. But instead of asking why Trump made this decision, many chose to blame him for the consequences. The reality is that US taxpayers have no obligation to fund corrupt governments. Aid is meant to help people, not to finance mismanagement and theft. If African governments were truly committed to development, they would not need continuous handouts. The anger directed at Trump should instead be directed at the leaders who have failed to make their nations self-sufficient. A responsible government would see the withdrawal of aid not as a crisis, but as an opportunity to stand on its own. This is precisely what Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso understood when he declared that cutting aid would not kill his country, but would instead force it to work harder and reform itself. His leadership contrasts sharply with that of many other African politicians who, instead of fostering independence, cling to foreign aid as a permanent solution. While aid is intended to support development in many African nations, it has become a tool for corruption and exploitation. African leaders have perfected various methods to siphon off foreign funds for personal enrichment. 1. Embezzlement. Aid money meant for healthcare, education, or infrastructure is funneled into private bank accounts. This is facilitated by weak auditing and lack of accountability. 2. Kickbacks and bribes. Contracts funded by foreign aid often require bribes, inflating costs and reducing quality. Contractors cut corners to make up for the financial losses caused by corruption. 3. Overpriced and fake projects. Governments inflate the cost of projects to siphon off excess funds, or worse, create ghost projects that exist only on paper. 4. Diversion of development loans. Instead of funding productive sectors, loans are used for luxury purchases, mansions, cars, and foreign real estate. This is why many African countries remain poor despite receiving billions in aid over the years. The problem is not a lack of resources, it is bad governance. Not every African country misuses aid, but for those that do, Trump's decision should serve as a wake-up call. A continent blessed with abundant natural resources, vast arable land, and a young, energetic population should not be relying on foreign handouts. Instead of begging for aid, African leaders should focus on building strong institutions that prevent corruption and promote accountability, investing in local industries to create jobs and reduce reliance on imports, developing agricultural and manufacturing sectors to ensure food security and economic stability, empowering citizens through education and skills training, ensuring they can contribute to national development, creating mechanisms for transparency, such as public finance tracking systems, so that every dollar spent can be accounted for. This is why Captain Ibrahim Traoré's approach is so revolutionary. He established a platform where citizens can report corruption cases directly to him, something few African leaders would dare to implement. Why? Because they know exactly how deep their corruption runs. The end of US aid to African countries is not the catastrophe many claim it to be. It is a test. It challenges African governments to prove that they can survive without handouts. It forces them to confront the reality that true independence does not come from foreign aid, but from economic self-sufficiency and good governance. Until African leaders take responsibility for their countries, no amount of foreign aid will solve their problems. The real enemy is not Trump or any other Western leader who decides to cut aid. It is the corrupt political class that has for decades chosen to enrich itself at the expense of its people. Africa does not need more aid. It needs accountability, it needs leadership, and most importantly, it needs a commitment to self-reliance. Only then will the continent break free from the cycle of dependency and take its rightful place as a global powerhouse. And this is why I insist that African leaders must take a serious introspective look at their governance and ask themselves a fundamental question. Why is Captain Ibrahim Traoré celebrated across the continent while they struggle to gain respect from their own people? What is he doing differently that millions across Africa admire? And why do their citizens not afford them the same level of honor? The answer lies in his leadership style, rooted in action, problem-solving, and a genuine commitment to the welfare of his people. Unlike many African politicians who offer empty rhetoric while looting national wealth, Traoré is implementing bold, practical reforms that directly improve the lives of Burkinabés. Last night, I conducted an extensive analysis of Burkina Faso's evolving political landscape to understand who Captain Ibrahim Traoré truly is. Initially, I feared he might be another ideological revolutionary focused only on rhetoric without tangible solutions. I also worried that he might be just another leader who talks about colonization and imperialism without offering concrete steps towards self-sufficiency. I was wrong on both counts. Traoré is not just a critic of Africa's post-colonial struggles. He is actively dismantling the structures of foreign dependency and implementing long-term transformative policies. One of the most striking aspects of Traoré's leadership is his approach to economic sovereignty. Burkina Faso is one of the world's largest gold producers, yet for decades, it lacked even a single gold refinery. This meant that miners were exporting raw ore to European countries, only for the country to buy back refined gold at a higher price. This cycle of exploitation was unacceptable to Traoré. His solution: build a gold refinery in Burkina Faso. This move keeps wealth within the country instead of transferring it abroad, creates thousands of local jobs in mining and refining, increases government revenue from a valuable natural resource. Burkina Faso has long been a major tomato exporter, yet ironically, the country can import tomato paste from foreign nations. This inefficiency did not sit well with Traoré. His response: he commissioned the construction of a tomato processing plant. This ensures food security by producing more products locally, increased job opportunities for local farmers and workers, economic self-reliance, reducing unnecessary import costs. Unlike many African leaders who rely on foreign aid while ignoring local industry, Traoré has launched an ambitious industrialization plan across various sectors. His administration is building a pharmaceutical production plant to manufacture essential medicines domestically, cashew nut processing factories to add value to one of Burkina Faso's major agricultural exports, a waste treatment factory to improve environmental management, a nuclear plant to diversify the country's energy supply, a shea butter and edible oil production complex, ensuring Burkina Faso fully capitalizes on its natural resources. All these projects are designed to reduce dependence on foreign imports, create local jobs, and drive economic prosperity. Instead of spending state money on luxury, Traoré has prioritized healthcare for ordinary citizens. He has approved an $80 million world-class hospital, but his real impact is seen in his day-to-day decisions. Rather than upgrading his official vehicles, he has been purchasing modern ambulances to reach remote villages. He has expanded rural healthcare programs, ensuring that even the poorest citizens receive medical attention. Unlike traditional African governments that rely on bloated bureaucracies, Traoré partners with the private sector for national development. He introduced popular shareholding, a policy that allows ordinary citizens to invest in national projects. For example, he sold % of the government's telecom company to the public, generating a $60 million in revenue. This money was reinvested into critical sectors like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. In a shocking move, Traoré cut government ministers' salaries while increasing teachers' wages, reduced public officials' access to luxury perks, no first-class flights, no luxury cars, or no excessive foreign trips. uses a second-hand pickup truck while channeling public funds into national development. This stands in stark contrast to many African leaders who travel in private jets while their citizens suffer. African politicians are notorious for suppressing dissent, but Traoré shocked the world when he declared that he would defend his people's right to protest even against his own government. This demonstrates genuine accountability. He sees himself as a servant of the people, not their ruler. A commitment to democracy, unlike many African leaders who cling to power through repression. Burkina Faso is currently fighting a war against al-Qaeda-backed insurgents, a major reason for the coup that brought Traoré to power. Under his leadership, thousands of young men and women have joined the army, inspired by his vision for national defense. Instead of relying on unreliable Western assistance, Traoré has partnered with Russia to strengthen security. His strategic military leadership is a key factor in Burkina Faso's fight against terrorism. During the inauguration of Ghana's new president, John Mahama, 21 African heads of state were in attendance. Yet, when their names were called, the crowd was silent. But when Captain Ibrahim Traoré was introduced, the entire stadium erupted in wild applause. But why did millions of Ghanaians celebrate him? Because he works hard every day to solve structural problems. Because he stays in his country, prioritizing domestic progress. Because he doesn't waste taxpayer money on luxury. Because he is creating industries, jobs, and economic opportunities. The moment was a wake-up call for African leaders. Traoré is proving that African nations do not need to beg for foreign aid to develop. Instead, they need courageous leadership, smart economic policies, a relentless commitment to serving the people. African leaders must decide, will they learn from Ibrahim Traoré and embrace bold, people-focused governance? Or will they continue with business as usual, enriching themselves while their countries remain poor? The choice is theirs. But one thing is certain, Africa is waking up and the people will no longer tolerate incompetence.